Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast, episode number 44. My name is Phil, and joining me as usual is Rohan. How's it going?
Good. How are things?
Very good, thank you.
Good.
And joining us today, we have, all the way from Switzerland, is Max. Hey, Max.
Hi, guys.
So, Max, some people will know you as the creator of the new hass-cli, so we're going to have fun talking about that with you in a moment too.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be fun.
This episode of the Home Assistant Podcast is brought to you by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily connect to Google and Amazon voice assistants for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. Configuration is via their user interface, so no fiddling with router settings or dynamic DNS or YAML.
So let's start off with talking about Logitech for a second. So they've re-enabled their local API.
That's good news.
So that's interesting. So we know there was a big backlash a little bit while ago that was saying that when they shut off the local API, and now here we are. You can now enable it, and as of version 4.15.250, so you can do it from the Logitech mobile app. I believe what they talked about before with where it comes to, technically it is unsupported and so on and so forth, and it may avoid your warranty. So that may be an issue.
Well, thank you, Logitech. We really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So a new episode, which means a new release. And once again, this is a jam-packed release. We don't have everything in this episode because there's just too much in here. But 0.88 has landed. And the first big feature to come out in this release is the concept of a person. So last release, 0.87, had the concept of an area, which was added to Home Assistant. Now we have the concept of a person. So the person allows you to combine multiple device trackers. So for example, you may have yourself tracked using GPS coordinates, and you may also have yourself tracked using something like Wi-Fi. Now with Home Assistant, you can have those two device trackers combined to a single person. And if either of those is home or marked as away, it will update your person as being, home or away, as opposed to, needing to use groups, which were previously used for that sort of thing. So that's really cool that we're finally getting to that sort of level.
Yeah. So instead of normally having, hey, Rohan's car is here or your phone is here, now it's, here's the concept of actually having that entity itself, right? Or having that person itself. So that's very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Speaking of people, there's a new way to authorize credentials on Home Assistant. So what we can do now is you can use command line as an authorization provider. So essentially what happens is it calls a command in the background, and then you can use that. So that should open up some other services and stuff to allow Home Assistant to log people in.
Yeah, that'll be. I'll be interested to see. I reckon there'll be a few community things around this. Maybe there'll be services out there that won't, really require a full-on integration with Home Assistant to become an authorization provider, but someone might be able to just do something custom with a command line authorization provider to do it.
Yeah, I'm more excited just because the authorization providers are, again, something that I've talked about in the past as well, where we've been wanting to get a little more different external sources in, right?
Yeah,
so now everything is using the internal database, but now, this is the first component we've seen that actually they talk about externally as well, saying, hey, with CLI, let's try logging people in there that way, right? Hopefully we'll see a bunch more coming down the road as well. So things like SAML and so on and so forth.
There's a new default configuration component, which has been added to Home Assistant. So this one's going to be a little bit different. Won't really affect if you're already a Home Assistant user. It will affect if you're installing Home Assistant from now on. So the default configuration component will basically be enabled by default moving forward for any new installations of Home Assistant. And it will allow, moving forward, when new components or new features are added to Home Assistant, for those to be automatically turned on in the future. So as an example, we previously, I think in a couple of releases ago now, we had the concept of the system health component added to Home Assistant. If you want that enabled in Home Assistant right now, you need to go in and you need to update your configuration YAML file to specifically allow it to be turned on. moving forward with the default configuration component enabled in Home Assistant installations, when a new feature or release, such as the system health component, is released, the default configuration can be set for that to be turned on, and then when users upgrade their Home Assistant version, those new features or functionalities are switched on with that upgrade. So if you do want to, it is backwards compatible. It is the new default configuration will be turned off by default if you're already using Home Assistant. So you can add it to your configuration file if you want to also have this new functionality moving forward.
Interesting.
Another notification platform has been added. This time it's for the Huawei LTE routers. So if you have a Huawei LTE router, you can now use SMS notifications from your router. So good if the internet drops out or something like that, you need to send an SMS somehow, you can leverage that.
Also, there's a new GitHub sensor as well. So you can see data from various GitHub repositories, including when it was last released, latest commit, so on and so forth, even things like open issues. So that'll be handy.
Yeah, very.
Also, there's a Google PubSub component. So you can post any event changes, things like that from Home Assistant directly to Google, to the PubSub service that they have. Things like if you're doing any cloud dashboarding or any data science on the cloud, so on and so forth. Now you can enable that.
I've never heard of Google PubSub before, but that sounds really interesting. So I'm going to be checking that out.
Mm-hmm.
And also Smart Things, which I know, Rohan, you've been really excited about. I saw your screenshot you sent me the other day of all your new sensors that are coming through.
Yeah.
Smart Things now have climate and lock support as well in this release. So good to see that being fleshed out more too.
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed some of my sensors and such that didn't show up the last release also showed up. So which is great. Also, some breaking changes. So platform config won't allow you to contain keys that aren't supported anymore. So any invalid configuration options and so on and so forth will cause warnings and errors in Home Assistant. So if you misspelled something or so on and so forth, it'll basically just say, hey, you can't use this anymore. So hopefully that'll help get some configs cleaned up out there, and that'll be good.
Yeah.
Will it break it, or will it just won't?
Yes, I think this one's going to be a pretty big breaking change. So previously, I think if you had anything that wasn't accepted by a platform or even an old, configuration option, Home Assistant would just ignore it and keep it going through. But now, as of this release, if you attempt to start Home Assistant with that invalid config key, the applicable platform or service just it'll spit out an error saying, you've got an invalid configuration for the Philips Hue component, and then that Philips Hue component, until you've gone in and removed that invalid configuration, it won't, be enabled. So I think this one's going to be a pretty annoying change for this release. I think it's a necessary one, though, especially if you want to keep things clean and sort of help out with support and making sure that, configurations are clean and everything's just where it's meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's just I just realized that I might be bitten by it because I use it. I use this convention of having X something.
Yep.
In YAML have the what's called anchors, so you can reuse the same snippet.
Right.
That will show up as an unknown key. So I guess I'll try.
Yeah.
So anyone who've tried to compact their YAML might be bitten by this.
Yeah, that's actually a fair point. And so when you compacted your YAML, do you then run it through like another engine or something to then decompress it and put it into the way Home Assistant needs it? Or is it just that?
No, that's like YAML. The YAML supports natively that you can name things. So you can have, I have this, I use it mainly in Lovelace. So the same, you have, I don't know, 30 labels, but I don't want to specify the format for all labels. So I have an X label format.
Right.
And then the styles and whatever they are. And you put a colon, ampersand, shared style or something. And then I just refer to that shared style in every element. So it looks a bit funky, but it means that instead of having 100 lines, I have 30.
Yeah.
Right.
And I only update once. And I did it because I got it working last week. I'm like, oh, that's helped me. So now I'm seeing that they will restrict a bit. So, but I think even if it's restricted, they might loosen it up. I know, for example, Docker and other systems that use YAML a lot, they have this convention that they allow if you put X dash something, they'll ignore it. Everything else they'll complain about.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But anyway, I'll try it once I get the.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what happens there. Yeah.
And maybe there'll be another convention that, for those situations that Home Assistant will adopt as well to allow expanding those.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, so Zigbee ZHA component, there's been a couple of updates to that component as well. So this will affect you if you manage Zigbee directly through Home Assistant and using things like a Zigbee USB radio. So batteries will now be an attribute against the device entity, and the status of the device also, typically it used to be online, offline. Now it'll be online and unavailable, just like the rest of Home Assistant configurations as well.
And Google Home, now I am an Amazon Echo user, but I keep seeing these updates for Google Home and it's making me really jealous. But Google Home has been moved to its own component because there's, you've got, I think there's a media player that Google Home can be accessed from, and there's a few other things. So now you have access to device trackers. So if you're using the Google Home in your Home Assistant config, you'll now need to specify the Google Home platform. And in doing so, that will enable Google Home to be used for device trackers. So it will be able to do some Bluetooth scanning to see what devices the Google Home can see. And there's also new sensors for alarms and timers that are added into this release as well. So when you have, if you set a timer when you're cooking, you can have a sensor for Home Assistant exposed so that you can do things like flashing your lights when the timer is complete. Or you might be able to have Home Assistant start a morning routine when your alarm goes off in the morning, depending on what time you set that alarm for. So yeah, watch out for that. Make sure you update your configs if you're using Google Home.
That's interesting. We had a couple of Google Homes lying around, so I actually just set those up as well alongside my Amazon Echo. So guess I'll need to do that.
The new Google Home with the display doesn't allow you to show like Lovelace or anything yet, right?
No, I think it's very much locked down. Same with the Echo Show from Amazon. They're very much just the Google or Amazon dashboards that you can really display on them.
Mm-hmm. I know. Those are great devices to use for that use. So Speedtest and Fast.com have moved to their own components. So sensors that basically, which to have their own services, like this one, have the ability to manually trigger speed test. So those guys are being moved as well. So if you use a sensor, you'll need to upgrade your configuration.
And finally, some important changes if you're using custom components in Home Assistant. This may not apply to everyone, but just in case you are. So Home Assistant is moving to a new file structure as part of their upgrades to the core code and development and all that. And it may impact you if you're using any custom components that override the default built-in components of Home Assistant. So one example that's been given is if you've developed a custom component that makes or replaces the built-in Philips Hue component, you will need to rename your custom components file from the original file structure was light/hue.py. You'll now need to move that to hue/light.py. And of course, we'll have the release notes or our own show notes on hasspodcast.io if that was all too much for you to understand.
And just a couple of other noteworthy updates. Well, really one other noteworthy update. Fire TV devices linked to Home Assistant can now see which app is running in that Fire TV. So that's actually interesting. I just got one of these guys too, so that's fantastic.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. Well, I know I've talked about this previously. On my Roku, I have what app is running on the Roku determines, what things are done. So, for example, if we're watching Netflix, it'll know to do this or that. So, yeah, if you've got the Fire TV, I would definitely recommend look at the app stuff as well. You might be able to, when the Fire TV starts playing, maybe and.
This is the kind of thing that is making me reconsidering ditching my Apple TV and get like a Chromecast or something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely take a look at the app stuff because if once you start playing something on Netflix, you can have the lights dim. But if you're using, maybe like Amazon Prime Video. Maybe you want the lights not to dim because you're probably watching a TV series or something. So yeah, lots of cool automations I'm sure you'll have fun coming up with.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've been trying using I have a Logitech talking to the Apple TV, and then I just kind of send up down arrows to kind of maybe get it to the right place, but it's just not right. So
yeah. I remember having to do that before. I would have a XBMC now, which is now called Kodi, and I would have that on a Windows PC. So I would try and mimic the right number of IR commands to open the right app on the Windows machine, and it would never it would always get out of sync somehow, and you'd end up in the wrong program somehow.
Yeah, it's a wonder how they don't have I guess more control in their APIs and things like that, right? To say, or even within a closed ecosystem of something like Apple TV to Harmony, right, or something similar.
Yeah, surely
which is too bad because that would just make life that much easier.
Because surely you would think Apple would expose an API for authorized people like Logitech that you would think would be authorized, I guess, in order to be able to at least have some form of IP control or local control over that Apple TV to open up certain apps. So yeah, it's very interesting.
The only thing they have is you can AirPlay to it. It's the only
yeah.
So with your Apple TV, do you have the ability to do something similar with, I know Home Assistant has the media extractor sort of component where you can then Chromecast things to, Chromecast compatible devices. Is there something where you can, find a media URL and then send an AirPlay to the Apple TV? Or is it too locked down?
It's kind of locked down. You you can do it, but then you have to install an app on the Apple TV that then has to be running. And Apple TV will shut them down after a time. So
of course.
It's it's all technical feasible, but it's just locked down.
Yeah.
It'll come at some point. Yeah. It'll take some years for Apple.
What about HomeKit? Yeah. Is there any... I know HomeKit's sort of opening up.
You can turn on TV, you can control the volume, you can change basically anything you can do with the remote, which is 6 things or something.
Yeah.
But anything, I haven't found anything beyond that, no.
That is rather annoying.
Yeah, I'd love to know if somebody's got that working, because that would be really interesting to know.
Yeah, so that's I even have I use the Plex client on the Apple TV, and I think because Plex has the server and the server can tell me what is playing, so I can kind of get that sense, but I can't if I use the native Netflix or anything else. It's just a black box basically.
Yeah, if you're using two different cloud services, for example. So if you're using, let's say, Netflix and we used the example of Prime TV earlier too, right, or Prime Video. You still can't do that, right? You can't compare.
And the one feature I would like to do is I got Amazon Echo up and running, and I was so surprised that both my kid and wife started talking to it faster than I did. But the great thing is I can literally just go, I can say turn off Apple TV, and it will just turn off, which is great. Mm-hmm. But I want to do the turn on Netflix, so I don't have to go and click through and do that thing. But so that's I think it'll be faster. I get a Chromecast and I'll wait for Apple, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what I can do with the Fire TV as well. So I got the Fire TV just yesterday. I got it plugged in, so let's see what we can get done with that guy too. So hopefully that'll be interesting.
You missed one thing. I was waiting for that.
Oh, please!
There's a Danish public transport sensor component. You have to pronounce the name of.
I saw it in the release notes, and I thought, I can't pronounce it, and I'm not going to make a fool of myself again.
Okay. It's called it's Reiseplan. It's the national Danish transport service that someone added.
That's very cool. Yeah, I really do love all these public transport sensors that are added, because I think it does add an extra level of smarts to your home for your home to be able to sense, when public, like if there's issues with public transport or when the next public transport is. I think they are always great additions to see.
Have anyone actually done, like, because there's an API that exists from Google and Apple now in the maps for finding.
Yeah,
is that exposed?
I think so. Google actually use a format, I think it's called GTFS, and that is their, I think it's the Google Transport something or other. I can't remember what the acronym stands for now, but it's sort of their standard way for public transport providers around the world to tell Google about their public transport schedules. And there is
interesting. Yeah.
So there is a site out there that you can find. So you look up your government or your local council's public transport name, and it will return you if they have it available, the GTFS feed URL. And there is a component in Home Assistant that allows you to then pull in that information from Home Assistant. I haven't personally used it, so I could be joining the dots incorrectly here. So if anyone is using it and I've done it incorrectly, please let me know. But essentially, from the way I understand it is, once you have that feed that is a standard way of them defining the public transport data, you can then essentially just suck it down into Home Assistant and do what you need to with that component.
Yeah, because you basically do it for anything that they have, and it'll be a nice generic way. You might not get immediate warnings.
Exactly.
Like
yeah.
Or some stuff would be nice.
Yeah.
Well, next project.
So Max, this is the time where we usually turn around and focus our episode on you. And as I said before, you created the hass-cli, which is the command line interface for Home Assistant. But before we get there, I thought perhaps we should start with your journey. How did you get started with home automation, and what led you to Home Assistant?
Well, it's fairly recent, but in general, home automation, I've worked on and off, and I know a few people who've done home automation, but I have things I have at home for years. It's like I had a Logitech, I had the Philips Hue lights. The last 2 years, I got the Ring, what's it called, the doorbell, and Nuki. The Nuki IO is the lock, and Sonos. And I was kind of getting annoyed because things were just like, I couldn't get them to wire up, etc. But I tried using stuff like early on, like years ago, like Logitech that has some of this. You could do something. This is very early on. You could do something there, their UI, but it's just horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the Philips one, but again, I couldn't hook it up. So I was like, I just never bothered because I was like, no, this will take too much time. And the wife would never accept it. It'll just be me. I'll find it funny, but nothing will work. And then I was actually this year I'm not working. I'm on a extended leave. I took a year of absence to be with my kids and family. And then on the first day I had that absence, I actually twisted my foot and had a fracture. So all my plans of not using a computer and just be outside and have fun kind of died in the. In that part, but so a month in, I was like getting bored, and I was like, okay, let me see if I still use a computer. And I don't know if this was about the same time, but I remember I saw a Home Assistant popping up, and it was the 9th most active product on GitHub, and I said, let me try. And I was like, I've used OpenHAT before. It was just, I like it. It has a lot of extensibility, and it's great in that way, but it's a bit too heavy for me to just kind of play with. And then I just saw Home Assistant, and it was just this. I really liked it. It was a very simple layer of Python and YAML, and I could literally iterate and do things very fast and I had full control.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, hey, this is great. And I was starting, let me try and do the automation. I did some fixes to documentation, and I was getting annoyed about the UI, not because UI is great, it's awesome, but the way I work, I just try things, and then I want to see if it made an effect, but I don't want to run around in the house, right? So I wanted a way to look it up, and the UI there's a UI page to look at the state, etc. But it just got too tedious. I was like, there must be a command line tool for it, and I looked around, and there wasn't really anything. There was Fabian FABFF had a prototype. but it didn't work because this was in the old days of how it did authentication, and I was like, let me try and fix this. And then, boom, he gave me commit access, and we're talking. I saw Home Assistant the first time in, was that September last year, and we did the first release of Home Assistant in a new version November, December or something.
Yep.
And I've been kind of getting into a state, and then of being feature complete, which happened 2 weeks ago, where I did the 0.5 release, and that's when I made a blog about it, and people got a bit more involved. So now I literally built it because I was lazy. I didn't want to run around the house.
Well, that's how Home Assistant started, right? Like Paul didn't want to, to use a light switch, and here we are now.
And that was actually the things I've done with Home Assistant with and without the CLI was first was the motion sensor lights, which you can do in Philips Hue, but and it was actually the first time my wife went, "Oh, this is actually cool." Until then, she'd be like, "What are you doing?" But now we have the kitchen, like she goes down with the kids and on their arms, and she doesn't have to find a switch; it just turns on. I've added, and the reason why Home Assistant was I want to install some lights in the basement, but Philips Hue was a bit too expensive. But then I figured out, you can use the IKEA lights. It's not too expensive. I expanded with that, but then I was like, I have a IKEA bridge and a Philips Hue bridge. So I said, that's annoying. So I got the Conbi, the Zigbee USB thing, and that works great. And I added some Xiaomi devices to it. But those have been kind of disappointing because I had the motion sensor, like the vibration sensor, and I was hoping to put them on my washing machine or on the garage door, but they don't. In the Conbi, they don't record like movement until they just say I'm moving. They don't say I'm tilted or what, that kind of thing. I think they work on it, but it's been kind of stalled. So that's waiting. And the other one I did, which my wife actually approved of, was we have a humidifier in the living room that does this old infrared remote control too. So she has to, pick it up and point to it and all that kind of stuff. But I took a hue dimmer switch, which I didn't need anymore because now the light's going on its own, and wired it up to control a Broadlink arm, like the blaster, the infrared blaster. So now she can literally just wake up and see the kid is, needs adjusting the heat, and she doesn't have to. Just need to get to the remote and just click because it's now over radio, and therefore, just works. So that's been pretty cool. And my projects that I'm starting to work on is the Magic cards, having the RFID,
the RFID cards,
small credit cards. Yeah, and print something on them with the kids. And I got everything. I have the cards, I have the reader, I have the special print slot for the printer. I got a printer for it. But then it turns out that Canon decided that Apple shouldn't be well supported anymore. So I have to get a Windows machine up and running. So they can print, but they can't do the CD printing thing. They can't control it.
That's so annoying. Can you use like a Windows virtual machine just to?
That's what's on my to-do list of doing. But
right.
And the actual thing that got me started is I was looking for a system because I got the whole motion light working. Is how I really is looking forward to the day I can just remove my in the wall switches, like the physical buttons for on off. Because I have some lights I can't put hue lights in. And I really just want to put a Sonoff or something into that wall. But I don't do soldering or any. I haven't done that yet. So I'm looking for someone to build something I can just wire up and then just put it inside behind the wall, and it will hook up to Home Assistant. But I'm still waiting. It exists in US, but I haven't found anything that's compatible with Europe or Swiss plugs. So
right.
Well, yeah. Okay. But that was how I got to the CLI, and that's where we are now.
Yeah, so I guess so that's where you are with hass-cli. So how? So I'm guessing you wanted to be able to see states of things in Home Assistant, but nothing. You were just too lazy to open up the UI. Would that be the extent of it?
That was the first stuff that I was like, how do I get the state of if my kitchen light is on or off while I'm sitting in my office? I don't want to go down. So I needed that. So you can basically go. First of all, hass-cli is just a command line tool that talks to Home Assistant just like your browser or Node-RED or AppDaemon and all those guys do. So there's nothing magic about it. There's no magical things here. And I saw people asking in the beginning, like, how does it do this? And it's like, no, it's just no magic. It just works on the same API. So if your browser if you can open a browser and talk to Home Assistant, the CLI can work.
Like, so as a Docker user myself, I have to admit that when I first read the hass-cli, I was like, okay, that's cool, but as a Docker user, I don't have access to Home Assistant from the command line, so this isn't for me. And then I think it came out in one of your blog posts that you wrote that all it is just communicating over the API. So if you're using hass.io or if you're using Docker or anything, as long as you have API access to Home Assistant, you'll be able to use this command line tool. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, exactly. Right.
That's wicked. So,
and that was like I was a bit surprised when I saw it. I was like that's been repeated comment. Like, how do I get it into Docker? I'm like, no, you don't need to. But that said, the next release that hopefully will happen next week, we actually have a Docker version, so you can run it. You don't have to. Right now, you have to have Python installed on your machine to do this. But we will have a Docker container, so you can literally just go. You can make an alias for hass-cli, and it will just call Docker.
Oh.
And you will have it running. So you don't have to. It makes it all the installation problem.
Oh, that's awesome.
In that sense.
Yeah, very cool.
So, but yeah, so it just talks to the Home Assistant like anything else. And the basic things I use it for was in the beginning just to get an understanding of what Home Assistant was doing, which was in the beginning I was having a hard time because let's just talk about there's an event buzz and these events are going on. I was like, where do I see those events? And I haven't found a good way to have them. Some people use Node-RED to get it, and I'm like, I don't want to. I could figure it out, but it was just too tedious. So I in the latest version of the hass-cli, you can get states. So you can say hass-cli get office lights, and it will tell you what the state is and when it was last updated, that kind of thing. And by the way, it can do what's called autocompletion. So you can just go hass-cli entity get, and then you just say office and tab, and then it will figure out, oh, there's light office, there's sensor office, whatever it is, and you just choose, and out comes the result.
That's really cool.
Mean you don't have to remember stuff. And like I said, I did this because I'm lazy and I don't want to remember that. So you can get things, but you can also list things. So get a single sensor, a single state, or list multiple states. So for example, in my kitchen with the sensor, I have a kitchen light 1, 2, 3. I have like 6 lights down there. I have a kitchen sensor and a temperature. And I'm like, how do I get that? You just go hass-cli, entity list, and kitchen. And automatically it will say, okay, find anything that has the word kitchen in it. It can be a full, what's called a regular expression. So you can do all kind of pattern matching.
Yeah.
That's more for advanced users, but basically it does do what's called a substring search. So it will, anything cover the kitchen. So you get the list of entities. And because it's a command line tool, you can do all kind of crazy stuff. So you can get it in JSON or in YAML or as a table, as a markdown, as a comma separated string, whatever you want. And then you can pipe it, like you can pass it on to another command line tool. So what I actually do now is when I'm editing Lovelace, YAML, or groups automation, and I need the list of entities that I'm interested in, instead of manually typing them in, I just go hass-cli entity list kitchen, and then I pipe it over to a command that literally just takes every name and add a dash in front, so it becomes YAML, and then I paste it in. And I'm lazy. I can just copy paste instead of having to manually get those things.
That's
in there.
awesome.
That's great.
So, and then the next one is the watching. Again, understanding what's in the system and get the data out. And you can now go hass-cli. I need to remember how that one is. That's event watch. And automatically it will literally just dump everything that comes on that bus. It'll be very noisy if you have a very active house. But you can also go event watch and then the event type. For example, that will be state changed. Or the one I use to set up my dimmer switch to the humidifier, I needed to know the events and the names. And I just went hass-cli event watch, and the conb sends this event called decons event. And then it will only show me decons events. So you can filter that out. And that means, like, I've seen a lot of people asking, you need to listen to event. What events are there? And you can find it by reading up the thing. But with the CLI, you can literally just say hass-cli event watch and then just watch what's going on when you do things, and from that you can kind of that's what's going on, and great, I'll do it that way. So that was the reading part and of getting information from it, which was my biggest wish in the beginning. But then I came like, well, why can't I just also do things? Why do I have to actually go down to the kitchen to trigger the sensor? I just want to toggle it or turn on the lights for fun, basically. So you can also do hass-cli service list to find the service, but a service call home assistant then toggle, and then the entity ID, which also is what's called tab complete. So you can call any service in Home Assistant from the command line, and literally just from your computer, you can basically do anything you want to do. And I haven't done anything with it beyond just I found it was fun to do. But I've seen a few people responding back either private to me or on the blog saying, "Oh, this is cool," and they've used any system they had that doesn't work with Home Assistant, but they can actually set in a command line tool or a command. So they just there's a guy who has this like a magic cube, not the one from Xiaomi, but something else, and he literally his computer can detect that it's moved, and then he just says when this things happen, go hass-cli some command, and now it's wired into Home Assistant without having to wait for a component in Home Assistant. So it's kind of like a poor man's way of doing integration with Home Assistant without having to.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I guess because when I've read this, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm guessing this is going to be a way for people to integrate things. I've always wondered, I wonder what you could integrate with. Another thing I've just thought of now is maybe you've got a Linux cron job that needs to run every night at 3 a.m. You could probably use a service call to have something logged in the Home Assistant logs when that is done, or maybe flash the lights when it's done, something like that. So yeah, it's cool that it opens up Home Assistant to be able to do that.
And the cool thing is, all this is, again, I'm using the same API that's been there for years, basically. How long it is, but it's just more accessible. So you don't have to figure out how to do the authentication. You
don't have to worry about curl calls and setting authentication headers and all that sort of stuff. Exactly. It's done for you.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece too is if you're doing any scripting with Bash or anything like that too, that's amazing.
It works that way. And the other thing, and this is the one that I literally just did a week ago, was there's this things coming in Home Assistant with areas, and we talked about persons today, and which is all great. And actually, one of the things that I really, really like about Home Assistant, that all these concepts become something I can apply to Philips Hue and HomeKit and Chrome, like in one place. I don't have to go and set up, there's these groups in Home Assistant in Philips Hue and these in Logitech, and these Home Assistant can do it for me. And with Area, there's this level of like this great notion of things. But I think to many disappointments was that the only way you can edit this is now via the what's called the device registry or the the Area integration UI, which I know it's just the first version. I'm sure it's going to be better over time. But I was sitting there and I'm close to 60 devices in my house, and I'm like, that's gonna suck to do that. So with hass-cli, I can use the UI, no problem. But I can also go hass-cli device assign, and I say filter kitchen, and the area should be kitchen also. And now it will take any device that has kitchen in the name and assign that to the kitchen area.
Wow.
Okay.
Right.
And that means I now have all my stuff done in areas, and that took me literally like 4 minutes. Because I have a naming pattern, and I can just use that and apply.
Yeah. No, that's powerful.
Right, and that's all. I just want to clear. This is not a replacement or anything. This is literally just an enhancement of what is already there. And because I don't have to build a fancy UI and stuff, those who have the technical skills and interests, with the CLI, they can basically do anything. And whereas in the UI, you have to wait for someone to write the UI that does it for you. With the CLI, you can actually tinker and do it yourself. So I like this about Home Assistant. I can pick and choose what mood I'm in. Am I a UI guy today, or am I a tinker? And,
that's funny.
That's what's there.
That's cool.
What else we have? This one I haven't done so much on yet, but I do have the foundation for it. You can there's there's a command called template in hass-cli. So you say hass-cli template. You give it a what's it called? Jinja2, like a Python template file, and a data file. So, but it has two modes. It has one where you can what it does is just calling the built-in Home Assistant server-side render. So let's say you want to, instead of going to the UI and run that's just like testing UI to run this template, which you use to build template sensors. I was like, well, there's all this data in there. I want to get that out in a format. So I always want to have an easy way to run that generator from command line, which I can do now. But in that environment, there's only a certain limited set of data available. So, for example, devices and areas is not in there yet. It might come, but it's not there yet.
Right.
But I also have you can run hass template -- local. So instead of running it remotely, it runs it locally. And there, I haven't. So this is not fully built in, but I hope to get it in before next week. It literally will get all the states and devices and areas and put it into so you can access them. And from there, I can now run like a template and generate like an inventory list of all my items. And there's a Hugh Phillips and an IKEA and a Logitech, whatever is there. And you've seen these people who have their GitHub pages with config and have like a table of all the devices they have. I can now kind of generate that
all from the command line
on its own. Yeah, right.
That's yeah.
And this is not the only thing. I'm pretty sure others will have crazy other things they will come up with.
Well, this actually becomes pretty good for those that do want to push their config to GitHub. You could potentially have a lot of these devices, all your READMEs on GitHub done via like a Travis CI build that's powered by this hass-cli.
That's my litmus test for that feature of being able to do kind of that.
That's awesome.
That is very cool.
And it's I built it because I was lazy and I didn't want to figure out. And I was like, okay, others can do this and make it happen. And one thing I haven't done this yet, but I realized I can now is you can have in Home Assistant you can have what's called a file watch. So you can have Home Assistant looking for file is changing. So let's say you're going to your config and you change a file in the config directory. And of course, if you use Lovelace, other thing, they will read automatically. But I can actually with this say, hey, you know what? I have a very complex setup. I want to use templates to generate it. So when I can do it when on a file has changed or an entity has changed or device shows up, I can then literally call the hass-cli to run the template and generate the UI Lovelace, and up it pops. Right, so I can have this. I can have this turnaround, but of reloading without having to manually do that stuff. So again, it's just a kind of enabler of doing crazy things.
So one thing that's sort of maybe not directly related to this CLI, but something that I've just started thinking, now I can see it being a potential in the future is I use Visual Studio Code a lot to edit my Home Assistant config, and I've started using the snippets feature to sort of auto-complete, my Home Assistant entities, but I'm guessing it would be very easy for someone that's more smarter than me to be able to create a Visual Studio Code integration that maybe uses the hass-cli to then, automatically go out and fetch the latest entity IDs from Home Assistant while I'm typing in my YAML code. So if there's someone out there that wants to build that is a great use case for this.
I actually forgot about it, but this was actually why I started doing this. In the company I work for, Red Hat, I actually worked on the team that was working with VS Code. And they had this notion in there, it's called the language server protocol, where you can literally build plugin for anything. And I actually started down the road, hey, it would be fun to have a VS Code editor that could do auto-completion of the YAML stuff. And I have a prototype for that stuff, but I just haven't completed it. But yes, you can completely do that. And you can do that via the hass-cli or just talk directly to the API.
That's right, yeah.
That is cool. Yeah, see, there you go. You got a feature request, and it's almost implemented too.
But actually, what I actually got more into is the cool thing with the hass-cli is, again, you can run it anywhere. So you can have it on your Mac or your PC or whatever that can run Python. There's also those who don't want that, and the Frank's hass-cli add-on, the SSH add-on, has the hass-cli built in, so you can use it from there in the terminal. But the thing I actually really would like to do is the IDE. There's the Cloud9 IDE that they use. It can also, you sit and edit things there. And when you save, you can then run commands. And I want to call the hass-cli. But unfortunately, that IDE requires Python 2, so it can't run the CLI because that was Python 3. But I talked to him the other day. He says he's working on integrating a thing called Thea that should be able to run with Python 3. So that means literally you can imagine if you have hass.io, it will out of the box, if you install the IDE and the terminal and Node-RED and that similar, they will all be able to talk to the API and do everything, but they can also use the hass-cli, which enables you to integrate with anything. Like you don't even need to wait for a Node-RED component or automation. You can literally just script it any way you like. But I hope that will come in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Once we get the Python 3.
Yeah, this is amazing. It sounds just so useful. I think I'm at the point where I am going to give it a shot. Let's just even if nothing, just to pull it out and just to pull out information. And it's funny. You really appeal to me with the here's how I fill in the entity IDs.
Yes.
It's just one of those stupid things that you have to do every single time, and it's frustrating. So if I can have a tool that I can just pull it directly without having to look in the UI or look somewhere else, that's handy.
It's safe. Yeah. Well, I probably use more time now on it than it saved me, but it literally every time I'm like, the YAML, like, I have to find a list of entities. Like, I just call the CLI and it will give it.
I mean, out of all the times we spend creating our automations, wouldn't it just be more quicker to turn the light switch off and on? Like,
no. Like having to lift your arm and push the button is that's you don't. As I try to explain, like so many people ask me, like, what have you been doing on your sabbatical? Well, I've made it so I don't have to turn on light. Oh, okay, but like it's been it's one of those things you can't explain it until you tried it. You go like, I just go down, turn on light, and I'll leave again. There's no hunting down for switches. So no, it's a good thing.
So what are you using like for your personal setup? Like what is powering your home assistant? Do you have like this big beast of a machine that's running in your basement to?
The first time I tried to run, I tried to use. I have a Synology server, actually a fairly big one, but I can't remember. So I think I got it running in Docker, but there was just something that go like, this is going to be tedious. So I actually just ordered a Raspberry Pi, and now I run it there. I have a Raspberry Pi I run hass.io on it, and with the conb stick on it, and that's it. The one thing I was considering making me move it to a bigger one was to the whole TensorFlow with you can detect what's on the camera.
Yeah.
I really, really want that one. But it's not in the hass.io because the TensorFlow is like a massive Docker image.
Yeah, it's huge.
But I started, there was a guy who had the same problem that he's now looking into making it so you can run TensorFlow on another machine or another Docker container. That will mean that you could have TensorFlow running as a separate Docker on hass.io, or have it running on your big Synology or your machine somewhere. But once that's there, then I'll still just run on the Raspberry Pi because it's like nice and simple. It's like small and it works. And So that's my setup. 2 weeks ago, I moved it to, instead of using the database, the built-in database, I run the database on the Synology.
Through MySQL or something like that?
Yeah, MariaDB. So MySQL,
yep.
Yeah. And I just did that because I kept seeing these people, my SSD card's fried and I have to restart. I'm like, which I haven't had a problem. But now I did this so that it doesn't,
Yeah. If you're running it on a Raspberry Pi, the less database writes you can have running, the longer your SD card will run. So I definitely would recommend eventually moving over to something like MariaDB or MySQL.
If you can.
And again, I don't know if I have a lot of traffic or anything, but I didn't feel the speed being bad. But once I moved to the MySQL, I can feel like the system kind of have more. It's faster, especially around the history.
Yeah.
I forgot. That's the hass-cli has other features too. I forgot. It's been a while since I did this. You can go hass-cli history. So if you go to the history tab in a logbook in Home Assistant, you wait for it to load and it shows you all that stuff that happened. And it always annoyed me that it always shows a day at a time.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, so you can now go hass-cli history, and I forgot the format now, but like you can type 2D, like 2 days, and it will just give you the last 2 days. Or you can say the last 30 minutes, 30 minutes. Or you can give it a specific timestamp. And you can say, again, a filter. You can say anything that has kitchen in it, or kitchen or office. And you can literally just say what happened in the last 10 or 30 minutes, which again,
now that is very useful
when you're trying to figure out automation, right?
Because I don't use the logbook much unless it's for debugging why an automation got fired, and having to wait for it to load a whole day's worth of data, especially when it's like 10 p.m. at night, so you've got 22 hours of the day already used up. It can be very frustrating having to wait for that to load. So that is a very handy feature.
Yeah. And by the way, and the two things is, so I did the feature before I did the database thing, and there it just saved me a ton of time. Getting a database in made it faster, but again, if you have a lot of sensors, then even if the Home Assistant give it to you, the way the UI is built, it takes time for it to get it up.
Fill out.
And so that's in there. The history. I was just looking if anything else we have. I have a map feature. It's an old one, but you just go Home Assistant map, and it will open up a map with where you are. That's the OpenStreetMap of the locations you have. What's there? I have Discover, which I might have to turn off, but literally the same mechanism that Home Assistant used to discover what's running on your home network, you can run from Home Assistant, from hass-cli, so you can kind of see what is broadcasted on your network, which I learned a lot of stuff. I was like, I have devices I didn't even know about. So
that's handy.
Well, that will sort of make it more transparent what is actually broadcasting on your network, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's config, which is you can go Home Assistant config, and literally just dumps to you the names and values you have. So you can say one thing I had, because I run hass.io, it's sometimes, I'm not sure if it has a Home Assistant, but it can take a time to boot up, and I'm not sure if it's rebooted, and if it's enabled a component, so now I can go hass-cli config components and just grep for like, if let's say I'm playing with the PlayStation, and it will tell me if PlayStation is enabled or not in the Home Assistant instance. So I use that again to not having to go to the logs or anything to see if it booted up. I can just get that information from there. We have logs, so you can just go Home Assistant system logs, and it'll give you the logs, so you don't have to go to the UI again. What's called raw. So literally, there's a nice REST API behind the Home Assistant, and the WebSocket API is there now. I haven't done the raw WebSocket API now, but I will do it. But the REST API is there, so you can literally go Home hass-cli raw, and then use tag completion to call anything that's documented in the Home Assistant API. You can just kind of browse around and play around with.
Wow.
So that's I want to do the same for WebSocket because all the API is now in the WebSocket. I have a busy week. I have 6 days to make it work before I start traveling.
That is very cool.
But it won't take you that long, so that's fine. 6 days is plenty of time.
Hopefully you're not doing anything in the next 6 days.
Yeah, I think that's kind of all the stuff there is to it. Yeah, the next right now you install it with PIP like Python. You'll have Docker in the next one.
The package manager. Yep.
You have Docker. And by the way, if anyone uses PIP, it's recommended to use a virtual environment just so you don't mess things up. But But with Docker, you don't have to care. There's also someone who made what's called Brew, a formula for Brew. I'm not sure that's going to make it in for the release, but so if you're on a Mac and use the Brew package manager, you can go Brew install Home Assistant CLI. But that's the PR waiting. That'll come in next week.
And what about for Windows users? Is there any love for anyone stuck on Windows?
So this is another incentive for me to go back to my Matic Card product and get that virtual machine up and running. It should. I haven't personally tested it, but if anyone, it should just work. But especially the Docker approach should work.
Yeah.
The only thing that doesn't work in Windows, the only thing that doesn't work is the autocompletion. You'll have to run BAS or CCL, setshell for that to work. In today's day, you can do it, but if you're on Windows, I recommend using the Docker approach in the next release.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So, I guess while you're here and while you've given us so much awesome stuff to go off with, what is your favorite automation you've got in your smart home right now?
My favorite one is probably I've said many times is just to turn the lights on or off and the flux thing. I put that on. So now my wife was complaining. Well, she loved the lights turning on its own, but then she complained that the lights were too bright.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And I enabled the flux component. It's not perfect, but at least it kind of dims the light compared to the light level. And that's probably the one that's there. It's also the only one I actually have working right now, but that's because I'm waiting for I wanted to do that whole the vibration sensor thing, but yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like you've been busy with anything else, so I don't know why that's your only automation that's been working.
That's right.
I have now that I have the CLI, so I can stop. I can still be lazy when I work with Home Assistant. I hope that I have a lot of product I wanted to do, but they'll have to wait.
There you go. So how do you typically utilize Home Assistant? Like, do you prefer using voice through something like an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, or do you use the UI? Or
it's mainly it's been just dimming of light, etc. But I got an Echo for fun, and I literally thought that my wife and kid would hate it, but it just kind of works. And I got what's called the cloud subscription, so all the things are set up. I could do it all on my own, but using the Nabu thing was just simple, and it works. So you just go turn on my kids is yelling at the Amazon Echo to play music, and turn on the lights and all that stuff, and that's working. The one thing I really want to do is the floor plan kind of thing with the overview.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm looking for a device like the Home Assistant, the Google Home, that's nice and to look at. But I've been working on getting the floor plan stuff working with the picture elements in Lovelace, and that's still work in progress. But I hope that will. Yeah, I have it working. It works on my laptop. I can use my tablet, but I'm missing the tablet I can put somewhere that is works with both having kids and a wife, which I haven't found yet.
Yeah.
So
yeah, fair enough.
So yeah. By the way, that reminds the one thing I did last week. So those who there's two things, right? There's the floor plan, the old floor plan thing, which uses SWD and is very powerful, but it doesn't work in Lovelace. Not sure why. But then there's the picture element cards, and I don't know why, but everyone I've seen using it has this problem of positioning the elements, which I had a problem with too. You have to type in top and left percentage. And I just released a video explaining how to use it with the Chrome DevTools. I'm not sure. Have you tried the picture element stuff?
Yeah, so I think there is or at least when I set one up, there was a Lovelace toggle. There was a setting or something, or another card that you could overlay that would just display the percentages of where to align things correctly.
But it's first of all, it doesn't work all the time, and two, it's not exactly the right value.
Oh, really? Well,
it works for most cases. So if you only do a few, it's probably fine. But the cool thing is, this was actually Paolo's who pointed me to it. You can literally just go into DevTools and then click the select element and click the light or the camera, whatever you have.
Yep.
And then put on it and go to the code in the developer tools, and you can just use the arrows to move the element around. And once it's there, you copy those values into YAML or the Lovelace UI, and it's there. You don't need any custom cards or anything. So that was when I got that. Suddenly, I've had this 3D overview thing, but I was just so annoyed that things were not at the exact position to be nice, and it didn't scale and whatever. And I just kind of gave up on it because it was just too tedious for me to find the position, save, reload, and back and forth. But this thing, it just works.
All right, so I think that brings us to about the end of the episode. Any final notes, Max?
Well, I just remembered Phil likes the AfterShip component I did.
I love that AfterShip component.
Yeah. So the AfterShip. Well, I haven't done the features you asked for yet, but anyway. So AfterShip component is just there's this component service called AfterShip that can keep track of all your packages, 17 tracker or whatever. But the AfterShip, now it's saying the AfterShip, it actually has a public API, and it kind of just works. But 17 track doesn't have a public API, and it's kind of wonky in places. But that you can literally say, these packages are on its way, and the UPS or Swiss Post or whatever country it has, it's the one that has the biggest amount of service as far as I know.
Yeah, I think there isn't. I think it's got all of the Australian carriers, even the smaller brands out here as well. So, it's great. The downside is you do have to put a credit card behind the account to get access to it. It is a free service though, so I think it's 100 packages per month you can track for free. But after that, they will charge you. But that's fine.
So you have to go beyond. I think it's 1,000 a month or something.
Yeah,
it's a lot. So I've used it. I haven't had any problems.
What sort of automations do you have around that? Do you have anything to tell you, okay, you've got a package coming today, or the package has been delivered?
So that was actually, again, I got lost in being lazy. I was like, what I really wanted to do is because, this is what's it called? It's like an evil circle, because I started ordering shit from AliExpress, and I got packages all the time, and I was like, and they take 12, 50 days to come here, and I was getting annoyed not having it. So let me have it in Home Assistant. And there was no component that could do it for me for Swiss Post. But then I found AfterShip. I'm like, oh, let me get that in. And by the way, the first AfterShip was not done by me. I just made it part of. I moved it to the Home Assistant, the built-in.
Yep.
And I actually wanted to have, because I wanted to have the boxes on the map of where they were. So I wanted to look at my map and say, okay, I have some packages coming from Denmark. I have some from China. I have some from wherever. And that was what I got going. And I have a prototype for it, but I got stuck doing the CLI instead. But my idea was to show them on the map, and these are the packages on the way, and kind of have them there. And I have it. I got all the notifications on email. So I have a prototype. I know I can make it work. I just haven't finished it. Literally used the mail watching component in Home Assistant, and when it hits a specific mail, then I can call the service in AfterShip that adds a tracking number to the list of packages. So right now I have to manually take the number and put into AfterShip. Which
yes, me too.
And I'm like, well, why don't I just scan the email for
the tracking number?
Add it to there, and then it'll just automatically work. But so
okay, that's really cool.
Again, I'll do that in the after some of the other stuff is done.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that.
But that'll be really cool, because then it will work for anything like UPS, DHL, Swiss Post, Australian Post, and it will just be one setup. So instead of have to explain, oh, you use this component if you live in Denmark, or this component in Australia, you just say install AfterShip, enable this automation, and it'll just run.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's very
Next
cool.
time.
So with that, I think that about wraps up the episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Max, for taking the time and all your work on hass-cli. You've certainly blown our minds today. I think Rohan is definitely installing it right now, and I'll be installing it very shortly.
Yeah. And just so people are aware, the reason why I actually wanted to get on today was that in 6 days I'm actually leaving for traveling for 2.5 months. So I hope this podcast comes out fast. People will ask me a question, and then because in 5 days I'll Fabian will be the only one who's around. But it's so easy to use. You don't have to understand anything. So
I'm sure when you get back, you will have a lot of feature requests ready for you.
Exactly. Exactly.
We'll do that. So cool.
All right. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.